Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 202. Fake Revolutionary. Part 4. Avoid it. The executioner's scythe moved along with Eileen's call. At this moment, his thoughts accelerated and the world looked like slow motion. Kim Dokja thought, "What the hell is this?" I gritted my teeth and rushed towards Jang Haeung. There might be a difference between the 111th regression and the current regression, but there was no such development in the original second night. The executioners didn't receive any orders from the Duke and should have wasted their second night after being unable to kill me. Kill everyone. Now the actions of the executioners were like those who had been playing this game for a long time. It was clear that someone had given them orders. I pushed Jang Haeung away while releasing Blade of Belief and receiving the executioner's scythe. The combat shock has made your story configuration incomplete. The situation wasn't very good. I couldn't fight now. The story fragment face of a Casanova who died from sexual relations has been slightly damaged. Damn, my face. Fortunately, the executioner had no intention of fighting with me and immediately switched targets. I barely managed to sigh, but quickly realized that this wasn't a good thing. Ku ep the revio lutio nary alive. Aak. Citizens shrieked as they were cut by the executioner's scythes. No one was dead yet, but half a dozen people were already bleeding. Our revolutionary. I bit my lips. Kim Dokja thought, was there a schemer he didn't know about? Or was the Duke already acting? The stories of ways of survival flowed quickly through Kim Dokja's head. Everyone gather this way. I can't protect you if you scatter. Kim Dokja judged. The Duke hadn't moved. It wouldn't have ended like this if the Duke moved. The fourth wall was right. The industrial complex would already be ruined if the Duke had moved. Quackak. The damage to the people didn't reduce. The injuries from the executioner's scythes continued all over the place. There were over 10 wounded in an instant. The good news was that the enemies couldn't kill many citizens. The game's rules stated that each executioner could only kill one citizen per day. At least, for 3 days. Aileen shouted, "Everyone fight against them. They can't use execution without the mark." Some citizens armed themselves with weapons at Eileen's words, but the situation didn't easily improve. In the first place, only a few citizens could follow the movements of the executioners. Even then, they didn't last long. Quackak. The fact that the people didn't know when the executioners would use the mark added to their fear. They could always use the mark and some citizens would surely die. Furthermore, the Guardian was protecting me and couldn't protect them. Run. In the end, the ranks collapsed and the citizens started to scatter. No. Don't go. Aileen urgently shouted, but the frightened citizens couldn't hear anything. The injured citizens groaned and seemed to be cursing towards empty air. Kim Dokja was quietly furious. I didn't know who did this, but save me. A wounded civilian crawled towards me. There were many people without good details. Some of them would die by the end of this night if they were unlucky. The same went for those who fled. This night would be remembered as more terrible than any other night in the industrial complex. If the damage gets bigger, then it will go according to their intentions. The citizens would no longer be willing to help the revolution. They would once again follow the orders of the Duke and Eileen's civil council would be isolated. I couldn't allow this to happen. Thus, I had to play a different hand. The moment I took a short breath to call out to Aileen. This way. Kill me. Someone hiding behind a building started shouting. It was Mark. Over here. I am the Guardian. Jang Haeung realized what was going on and shouted, "Damn. Pub owner, what are you doing?" It was a hasty judgment. It was a valid but bad judgment. I am the Guardian. Kill me. As Aileen and Jang Haeung glanced at me, I was already running towards Mark. At almost the same time, the executioners were also running. Guardian. Mark's provocation worked well. The scattered executioners gathered in an instant. Kill the Guardian. I used Bookmark and Way of the Wind to quickly rush towards Mark. Mark's pale face was nearing. The exclusive skill, Character List, is activated. Plus. Character List. Character, Mark Javier. Private Attribute, Dimensional Mover, Hero, Retired S-Grade Mercenary, Rare, First Class Chef, Rare. Constellation Sponsor, None. Exclusive Skills, Cooking LV9, Ingredients Processing LV8, Old Justice LV4, Sword Dance LV9, Private Skill, LV1. Asterisk this incarnation has a special role in the scenario. Asterisk some of the skills will be private due to the scenario penalty. Plus. In fact, unlike what I told Aileen, I couldn't know the exact position of a person using Character List. However, I could see that someone had a special position and an unknown skill. It was a fleeting dream. The dimensional mover from the Gaines planet, Mark Javier. He retired as a mercenary and became a chef after coming to the demon world. Every character in the scenario had their own reasons. Mark smiled at me as the scythes flew towards him. I hope you succeed, Revolutionary. I didn't know much about his life. He was a supporting role among countless people who died in ways of survival. The Siswitz executioner has placed a mark of death on Mark Javier. Mark Javier have been identified as the scapegoat of the night. Ways of Survival had a huge 3,149 chapters. Some people probably thought this story was too long. They thought it was a long and boring story. But for Kim Dokja, 3,149 chapters was short. I always thought this. I wished that Ways of Survival was longer. I had read so many chapters, but I was still curious about Ways of Survival. Don't worry. You won't die. Thus, I would read a part one hadn't read from now on. Vicky. If I die. Mark shouted with a bit of embarrassment. Why are you so anxious to die? No one will die. At least, not in my story. I blocked the sides of the executioners and used a skill. The exclusive skill Bookmark is activated. The proficiency of Bookmark has increased and a new slot has been enabled. I will place Knight of Revolution Mark Javier in the 6th slot. The character Mark Javier has been registered in the 6th slot. The number 6 bookmark is activated. Private skill LV1 is enabled. The scythe of an executioner headed to the neck of Mark, who had closed his eyes. You have temporarily acquired the position of guardian. However, my side was a bit faster. Someone has used their vitality to protect Mark Javier. The executioner's scythe stopped 1 inch from Mark's neck. The scythe stopped like it was caught in a net. Mark knew the meaning of this, and his eyes widened. The guardian was successful, and the mark of death has been released. Of course, Mark wasn't the only one to feel amazed. Is THR another guardian? It was a voice filled with disbelief. The executioners scattered into the darkness, one by one. The executioners couldn't kill anyone, unlike their purpose. I wasn't satisfied, but it was still okay. I sighed lightly and looked around where the survivors were staring at me. In particular, Jang Haeyoung and Aileen were staring with shock. Judging from their expressions, it would be a long night. No one died tonight. As expected, Jang Haeyoung and Mark didn't leave me alone. What are you really? What is your position? Are you actually a guardian? I would have suffered even more if Aileen wasn't taking care of the citizens. I shook my head and sighed. I told you. I am a fake revolutionary. Thus, I can be a fake guardian. Explain it now. Just let it go. I will expose too much if I tell you more details. Don't you know how dangerous it is to disclose your information in a situation like this? Let's say I tell you the information. If you are kidnapped and reveal my information to the Duke, how do you think this revolution will end? In fact, this was an excuse that Yu Jong-hyuk frequently used when he found explaining was annoying. Now I was Yu Jong-hyuk, so I didn't mind saying it. I am just Yu Jong-hyuk. Remember that. Kim Dokja thought, he feels like he is actually becoming Yu Jong-hyuk. Shut up. I miss Kim Dokja, who speaks with honorifics. As I was playing with the fourth wall, the two men watched them with tired eyes and shook their heads. You are a really difficult person. A message was probably entering Yu Jong-hyuk's ears on Earth by now. Perhaps it was this message? Your story is being created in the 73rd demon realm. If he was smart, he would notice what was going on. However, it didn't matter. The atmosphere calmed down and I brought up the main subject. Let's talk about work. There is something that broke my expectations. There is a guy attacking using the rules of the game. I heard that Duke Siswitz isn't a schemer. Do you think the Duke has moved directly? I don't think so. I think it is someone else. Still, tonight went well. Isn't it more favorable to us if there are two people who can use the power of a guardian? Not necessarily. Those guys won't use the mark tomorrow. What? If it is hard to kill me, then they will try to hurt as many people as possible. If the mark wasn't used, the night wouldn't end until the sun rose. Many people were already hurt tonight. We didn't win. We lost. Today people learned to fear the executioners again. Once tomorrow came, people's attitudes would be clear. People would be afraid of the Duke again and be afraid of the revolution. The enemies wouldn't miss this gap. Mark's expression became darker and he opened his mouth. Then what do we do now? We don't need to do anything. Maybe someone else will move first. I had seen numerous revolutionary games in Ways of Survival. If things were like this, then the next development was certain. The second position will appear. The second? Yes. A position other than revolutionary, guardian, and executioner. I just said this when someone knocked on the door. It was Aileen. Revolutionary, someone has come to find you. I saw her strangely tense face and knew that the movements of the enemy had already begun. He says he is a spy. Chapter 203. Fake Revolutionary. Part 5. Spy. I once read a phrase about the spies in Ways of Survival. All positions in the revolutionary game belong to either the revolutionary or the dictator. There is only one position that isn't fixed, and that is the spy. The most dangerous and most cowardly position in this revolutionary game. Therefore, Ways of Survival described the spy as followed. The team that gets the spy can win the game. In the revolutionary game where information was a top priority, the status of the spy was great. It was because the spy could check the position information of the desired person. There was a limit of 10 people a day, but this alone was enough for the spy to shake the entire board. Right now, a person claiming to be the spy was in front of me. Are you Yu Jong-hyuk? The appearance of the man didn't go well with the demon world. He gave off an ambiguous feeling. No, to be precise, what was it? Why did I get déjà vu from this face? I didn't recall a similar appearance in Ways of Survival. I replied to the man, that's right. I am Yu Jong-hyuk. By the way, the man's reaction was subtly strange. HRMM. Is that so? At this moment, I realized something. By the way, you know my name. Usually he should be asking if I was really the revolutionary. Yet he first confirmed that my name was Yu Jong-hyuk. The man shrugged. Haha, it is a famous name. Unlike his words, the man was stubbornly staring at my appearance. It was as if he was contrasting it with something he knew. I became certain. This person knows Yu Jong-hyuk. I quickly recalled Ways of Survival, but I couldn't make a guess. In the first place, Yu Jong-hyuk was a regressor, and this was officially before he entered the demon world. There wasn't anyone here who should know Yu Jong-hyuk well. If he was good at observing, he might have seen Yu Jong-hyuk by watching the Earth scenario, but it was unlikely. Due to my poor reaction, Jang Haeung, Aileen and Mark were nervously glancing between me and the man. Maybe they instinctively felt something. I decided to find out the identity of my opponent. What is your name? I am Aurelius. Aurelius? I hesitated for a moment. I remembered hearing this name somewhere. It wasn't Ways of Survival, but somewhere else. It is an unusual name. So they tell me. Then you are a spy? That's right. The exclusive skill Lie Detection LV3 is activated. During the revolutionary scenario, you can't use the lie detection skill. As expected, this skill didn't work. I had guessed it. There was a scene where Yu Jonghyuk of the 111th regression had been frustrated after learning that this skill didn't work. I tried it just in case, but it was as I figured. Well, if lie detection could be freely used, then the difficulty of this scenario would be very easy. Fortunately, I didn't only have lie detection. The exclusive skill Character List is activated. Of course, I couldn't discern the exact position of the opponent after using Character List. Nevertheless, I could at least figure out if he had a special position or not. The person's information can't be accessed through Character List. This person isn't registered on the Character List. What? I was confused for a moment. The information on the corresponding person is being updated. This person's information will be added in the next update. It wasn't the first time I heard this message, but it was unexpected. The man didn't know my situation and asked, "Huh? What's wrong?" A person who couldn't be read using Character List. It meant this man was a person who didn't contribute to the original Ways of Survival novel. In other words, the man was a variable I created. But how was it possible? This was the demon world, not Earth. I was hesitating when Mark asked, "Did you come here to join our side?" Maybe, maybe not. What does that mean? I came to save you. It is obvious that the revolution will be destroyed at this rate. You are coming to sprinkle the ashes even though the meal hasn't been cooked yet? It isn't a joke. Public opinion regarding you isn't good. I don't know if you have seen outside. Certainly, the outside had been noisy for a while. I heard a knocking on the door of the office. We glanced at each other before heading straight outside. Loud voices were heard as soon as I went outside. Revolutionary. Countless gazes focused on me after someone shouted. It was a crowd of nearly 100 people. Some of them shouted towards me in exaggerated voices. "It is because of you. If it wasn't for you, my wife was hurt." Someone even threw stones. To be honest, I was a bit surprised. There was some damage, but it wasn't enough for them to come out to such an extreme degree. The voices continued. It was better when the night came once every 3 days. Before the revolutionary scenario was invoked, night only came once every 3 days. Now night was invoked 2 days in a row. It was natural for people's fears to be heightened. Jang Haeyoung shouted towards these people. "You crazy, what are you crazy fuckers talking about? Are you so pathetic? It is okay for one person to die every 3 days?" Some people heard this and stepped back. Jang Haeyoung continued to shout. "If you want to live that way, then leave the industrial complex. What does a little boy like you know? Do you have any idea of what it is like outside?" The voices were frightened. Everyone here was well aware of it. Civilians belong to the scenario of the industrial complex. If they leave here, they will be given an exile penalty for leaving the scenario area. The exile penalty. There was no one in the demon world who didn't know what it was. Thus, people would rather turn the roulette of death once every 3 days. Now that the revolutionary emerged, the interval of the roulette had decreased from 3 days to 1 day. Do we have to experience night every day from now on? What are you going to do? What are you going to do in the future? The voices were filled with panic. Aileen and the other council members tried to restrain them, but the crowd's actions became fiercer. I turned my head and saw Aurelia staring at me with a despicable smile. "Do you now understand what's going on? A revolutionary who didn't have the support of the citizens was bound to be defeated. I smiled bitterly. You are on the Duke's side. It isn't important. The important thing is your choice. So what do you want? Surrender to the Duke. Everyone else can live except for you. In any case, your revolution is going to fail. I will be the sacrifice? I'm not saying that. I'll help you find a way to live. How? If you are really Yu Jong-hyuk, I will protect you. Doesn't the Duke want to kill me? My backer is far beyond Duke Siswitz. An existence that Duke Siswitz couldn't be compared to. I was quite intrigued by the suggestion. If I wasn't Yu Jong-hyuk, then I might have thought about it for a moment. Of course, I will refuse. I see. You will regret it. The next moment, Aurelius disappeared. In the midst of the crowd, someone shouted, "Let's give him to the Duke." The Duke said he will end the scenario if we hand him in. Then the night won't come. The voices that came out spread like wildfire. It was very interesting. In fact, I had seen a similar sight before. Maybe it was during the Minosoft labor negotiations. Everything is over when the next night comes. We have to catch the revolutionary before that. The crowd was moving with overwhelming agitation. The people were so terrified that it led to a backlash against me. As somebody grab him. I stared at them for a moment before stepping towards the crowd. The crowd was confused as I walked forward without any fear. My surroundings split apart like Moses' wave because the people tried to avoid contact with me. Are you that afraid of the executioner? I spoke as I pulled out Unbroken Faith. Then the blade of faith vibrated and a white light burst from it. My voice, filled with magic power, poured cold water on the crowd. A few people in the crowd were surprised by the wave of magic power and fell on their asses, which others backed away. I spoke towards them in a serene voice. Everybody has forgotten that this isn't the night. I raised the sword towards the air. The magical wave of white pure star energy poured from the heart of the gold dragon and filled the dark sky with a white light. My actions frightened people and they exclaimed, "W what? He wants to kill people. Aak. The revolutionary is killing civilians." The surprised people screamed and Eileen's shouts could be heard. However, I ignored all sounds and ran to the center of the crowd. Then I swung myself towards someone in the crowd without hesitation. First one. He was one of the men who had been inciting the crowd. The man was pierced in the heart and couldn't even scream. He just watched me with wide eyes as he died. The exclusive skill Fourth Wall is activated. The sensation of murder was gnawing at my hand. Obviously, I was affected by the move to kill someone. It was due to the habit that formed from trying to keep the king of no-killing attribute. However, today I didn't hesitate a single bit. It was as if I really had become Yu Jong-hyuk. The second one. The blade moved through the air and blood scattered. A second man's head flew away. Blood splashed, wetting my clothes, while the fearful expressions of the people around me could be seen. I moved my sword and stabbed the last man in the back. The last one. I killed 3 people in an instant and looked around. There were constant screams as the grieving civilians watched me. It wasn't just the citizens. Aileen, Jang Haeyoung and Mark were the same. They didn't understand what was going on and panic filled their faces. The revolutionary killed ordinary civilians. Nothing I said would be a convincing explanation. Nevertheless, this was something I never needed to explain. A change in the revolutionary scenario has occurred. Everyone looked up as the message was suddenly heard. It was followed by subsequent messages. An executioner has been killed by someone. An executioner has been killed by someone. An executioner has been killed by someone. Current number of executioners remaining, 7. People's expressions changed at the messages. A total of 3 people died. The number of dead executioners was also 3. The people watching me with trembling eyes now screamed and retreated from the dead bodies. It was as if they were looking at something terrible. Yu Yuak. E executioner? They were hiding here? Aaron was an executioner. Oh my God! Executioners hid among the civilians. In the midst of this colossal betrayal, the crowd gradually realized. The executioners had died. The executioners they thought to be invincible had died like a normal man. It was a story they had never experienced before. In front of this story, people were being inspired in unexpected ways. One man rose first and drew a sword. His eyes were blazing with anger. Son of a bitch. Kill those sons of a bitches. Those who had just been threatening me started to trample on the corpses. The seething heat of the crowd was several times their previous emotions. They had all lost something to the executioner. This was an act of miserable revenge, but it was the best they could do. I leisurely strolled through the crowd. Then I grabbed the neck of a man. Quack! You still have the great skill to incite others. The man who tried to escape struggled in my hands. How are you unscathed, Department Head Han Myungo?